and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and it is so good to have you here. Today, as we inch closer to summer, we are talking about the hot issues impacting those living right here in New Jersey. From quality of life to the upcoming New Jersey primary and midterm election, we've got so much to discuss. Ben Dworkin of the Rowan Institute for Public Policy is standing by to talk all about the elections. Our first guest, though, is going to get a little more local. Patrick Murray is the founding director of the Monmouth University Polling Institute. He is a familiar face around New Jersey and here on the show regularly providing commentary on polling in the political world and has his finger on the pulse of the people. Well, Patrick, it is so good to see you here. A number of polls, and the first one I want to talk about, Governor Murphy, he's recently said that the states are reviewing their options for a COVID resurge, but a recent Monmouth University poll says COVID concerns remain pretty low and few want the return of mask mandates. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting to a point where people, it's the concern issue. Am I going to get sick? Is a family member going to get sick? And we're approaching the low point, which we had very briefly last summer. If you remember, there was the sense when the vaccines came out that oh, we're going to turn a corner, and then another surge came. But in June of last year, people thought, oh, we're going to get out of this. So we're getting to that point there. But I think there's still a little bit of wariness. While only about a third of the public want to bring back mask mandates, there is a big partisan divide on that. A clear majority, over 60% of Democrats would like to see that happen, whereas independents and Republicans say no. When we talk about vaccine mandates, that number has been very consistent this year. It's hovering just above 40%. Right now. And so that's the kind of thing where people say, yeah, well, maybe we don't want to change what we do day to day, going out to the store or whatever and having to put on a mask, but just having this kind of blanket, mandate that, if you go to work, if you're around people, you should get the vaccine. There's a little bit more support for that. And that support hasn't moved at all with the ups and downs of the different surges that we've had.
Does your poll look at how it breaks down as far as parents and schools? Because in June you have proms, graduations, and then you are going into a summer break. Does it look into that breakdown of what parents want?
And we didn't look as closely this time because we did ask in our last poll a couple months ago about school-related issues. And what we found is that parents were no different than non-parents in terms of the kinds of concerns that they had with because you have that mix of you want to keep your kids safe, but you want to get your kids back to normal. And so we see that in the polls. We see some people who do want masks, some parents who do want to bring back masks, and other parents, a majority of parents who do not, who want to try to get back to normal as much as possible. I think the idea again is if people are vaccinated, then we can at least keep the impact of COVID in terms of the severity of the illness to a minimum. And that's important. But, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these events coming up, proms and graduations, because, a surge could shut those down. But so far, it looks like, schools have been fairly careful with it, and we've been fortunate in that we haven't seen any mass spreading of that. And I think that's what's feeding public opinion about this is like, we know it's still there, we know it's still a problem, but if everybody gets vaccinated, some people are going to get it, some people are going to get exposed, but you limit the quarantine to those who were directly exposed, and hopefully we can move on quickly.
Yeah. And as a mother of a graduating senior, I'm just hoping that it just goes away. It just goes away. So, because these young people, they've missed quite a bit. And
I mean, it's really very interesting. I have a daughter in college here in New Jersey, and she was pretty safe throughout the entire school year. And it was after the semester was over, after the school year was over, she came home, she went to an event with and she was exposed to somebody with COVID. Right. So you just never know when it's going to happen.
Right. Or where it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Another poll is looking at the quality of life index in New Jersey remaining stable, but the desire to exit New Jersey, what exit? The desire to exit New Jersey is ticking up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that people who live in New Jersey understand what New Jersey has to offer. I mean, there are a lot of great things about living in the Garden State. There's no question about it. And that's why those numbers continue to be, fairly solid about living in the state. The problem is, can you afford it when you don't need all those things? So when you don't need the good schools, when you don't need the access to good jobs, i.e. when you're retiring, when your kids have grown up, can you still afford to live in the state? And that's what people are telling us. That's the problem, is that once they don't need all those amenities that they're paying for through the nose, through the high cost of living here and the property taxes and so forth, that's the time that they have to take a hard look at their bank account and say, can we continue to afford to live here? Right. And that's what we're seeing, is that number has gone up with people saying that I think I'm going to have to get out of here at some point in time if things don't change. Now, not a lot of them will not leave. I mean, they have connections here, they have deep roots here. But the fact that the number is going up of the people who think they want to leave is a big warning sign.
Yeah, definitely concerning, because, and we've talked about this with other guests as well, is, people, we invest so much into our education system, and we have all these wonderful students, and then they end up leaving after high school, and then we lose that source of new employees and keeping jobs and people staying in the state, which is certainly an issue, and it is concerning.
Right, and we lose their parents too, because the parents want to go where the grandkids are, right? And so it's wherever their kids have moved to.
Yeah. Another topic: gas prices and pumping your own, because Jersey girls don't pump their gas, right? But one of your polls found a majority they do back pumping your own gas, but only if full service is still available. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So that was the real thing. If you're getting rid of full service, if you're allowing gas stations to choose one or the other, self-serve or full serve, people say, no way. You have to have full serve available. And if you do have full serve available, it makes sense to allow people, if they want to get out and pump their own gas, God bless them. They can go do that. And that's what the poll was really indicating there, is that, every other state does it, so we should do it too. But the problem with those other states is there are many places that you go where you can't find full serve, and that seems to be the tipping point for people, is that you still have to maintain that.
We need that safety net. We've got to have that safety net, right? Because sometimes there are times when I pull up and you've got to wait for somebody. It's like, oh, I just need to quickly. But honestly, especially if I'm having a hair day, I'm not getting out of the car.
It's a matter of convenience. Do you want to stay in the car because it's raining, or do you want to get out of the car because it's very busy and there's only one attendant there, and you want to have that choice. It's not a matter of cost. I mean, that's one of the things that a lot of the gas stations that are proposing, gas station owners that are proposing this or pushing this, is that they're saying, oh, the cost will come down. New Jerseyans don't believe that. They believe, if we have self-serve gas, it's going to cost the same as full-serve gas costs now. They'll just raise the price of full-serve gas rather than bringing down the price of lower serve. It really is just simply, hey, we should have the convenience of being able to do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, one final poll I wanted to talk about is in New Jersey. Democrats, when it comes to midterm election, and a lot of other states where they've already had their primaries, we're seeing Republicans on an uptick. But in New Jersey, Democrats seem to be preferred in the midterms, despite President Joe Biden having poor ratings.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're looking at the primary coming up next month. It's the big battles are on the Republican side in terms of those primaries, and that's why we're not focusing on the Democrats. Democrats did fairly well in the redistricting, the congressional redistricting here in New Jersey. A couple of Democrats got strengthened, one Democrat got weakened. But they're going to, looks like, even with the unpopularity of Joe Biden, the usual hit that the party in power takes during a midterm is that a number of Democrats in New Jersey are going to be pretty settled. I think one of the things that's interesting is, you have a campaign like, for example, the 5th district, Josh Gottheimer's district, which has been in the past a somewhat center-right district. It's gotten a little bit more Democrat with the redistricting this year. But Josh Gottheimer is not taking any chances here. So he's trying to pick help Republicans choose a primary opponent for him that's more to the right, as far to the right as possible, because he wants to make sure he can hold on to those middle of the road of voters. So there's a pack out there that's helping to promote the candidate that's farther to the right in the Republican primary.
Yeah.
This is a tactic that we've seen some other Democrats use before in the past, not here in New Jersey, in some other places. So Josh Gottheimer seems to be taking, or supporters of Gottheimer at least, are taking a page from that playbook.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to also see what's happening at the national level as far as the Supreme Court and Roe versus Wade, how that kind of filters down to our congressional midterm elections as well.
Right. I mean, and what we're finding is that, people, the majority of people, and particularly here in New Jersey, oppose the Supreme Court if they do overturn Roe v. Wade. But by the same token, and this is from a national poll that we did, vast majority say it's not going to affect them personally. And that's the key. Campaigns are about what hits me at home. And so if this happens, Democrats have to figure out a way to make this about issues beyond abortion, in the sense that this is just the thin end of the wedge. There are other things that are going to impact you. If they're going to do this, what else is going to happen to you that affects you in your daily life? So that remains to be seen, because we still don't know exactly what the court's going to do yet. And in fact, if the court doesn't do what we've heard through the leak that they're going to do, I think it's not going to help Democrats, because I think what the focus is going to be, they didn't go as far as we thought they might have, and that kind of deflates the Democrats' ability to use that as a campaign issue.
All right, Patrick Murray, Monmouth University, with the pulse of the people on New Jersey. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about so many of these different issues and where New Jerseyans, what they have to say about it.
My pleasure, Laura.
Dr. Ben Dworkin is the founding director of the Rowan Institute for Public Policy and Citizenship at Rowan University. He's going to pick it up now with a look into the upcoming midterm elections and also explain why New Jersey's 7th congressional district will have all eyes on it. Well, Ben Dworkin, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's always good to have you on the show.
It's wonderful to be with you again, Laura. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about midterm elections. Of course, in New Jersey, this is an off year for our state elections, but all of our congressional seats are up. So can you kind of give us a little bit of a view from above of what we're looking at, what we can expect with midterm elections in New Jersey?
Sure. Well, look, nationally, the Democrats have only a 5-seat majority margin in the House of Representatives. Now, all indications, the fact that it's a midterm election when you have a Democrat in the White House, the fact that the economy is not particularly great, that inflation is great, that the president's approval rating is not particularly good, all of these things would indicate that the Republicans are going to have a big year, and they have recruited some pretty strong candidates around the country. But here in New Jersey, we also had redistricting. The redistricting process really strengthened most of the Democratic-held districts. Now, right now, our 12 House seats, our 12 districts that we have in the House of Representatives, currently are represented 10-2 by Democrats, 10 Democrats and 2 Republicans. There is one district in New Jersey that is going to be the focal point even nationally, where people are going to be talking about it and millions of dollars are going to be spent there. And that is in District 7. District 7 has, I guess, a strong base in largely Somerset and Hunterdon counties, that area. Anyway, what we have here is we have the incumbent Tom Malinowski, a Democrat, who's running again for re-election, and he is going to likely, if the June primaries go as many of us expect, he is likely to face former Senate Republican leader Tom Kean Jr., son of the former governor. This was a nail-biter of a race 2 years ago. We expect it to be very close again. In redistricting, the district got marginally better for the Republicans, so that's a little bit of a help for Kean, but nobody expects this to be a blowout. This is going to be a very tight race, and that's where a lot of the attention is going to be in the midterm elections.
Right, yeah. I feel like State Senator Tom Kean, it's like he didn't ever stop running. Like, as a reporter, you get emails from the campaigns. They haven't stopped campaigning, it seems.
Nobody can really stop campaigning these days. Even an incumbent, the moment you win an election one year, you start your reelection because there's just a tremendous amount of money that has to be raised, organizing that has to be done, positioning, coalition building. All of this stuff just can't be left for the final 6 months. Somebody else is going to outwork you, and that other person, if they outwork you, is going to win. So you've had, yes, Tom Kean has been running pretty much from the moment the election was declared that Malinowski was a winner in the previous election in 2020. He's been running, but Malinowski too has been running nonstop. This is the nature of congressional races in our current day and age.
So what do you think the issues will be, right? We have a lot going on at the national level, right? Like you said, the president's approval ratings are not good. We've got the Supreme Court, Roe versus Wade. We don't know if that decision will be undone. And in New Jersey, which tends to be more liberal, most people tend to support Roe v. Wade. Will those types of decisions reverberate at the polls, or will they be a little bit more local? Or will the local issues, quality of life, be driving this? And I'm talking again, like you said, that 7th district that's part of Somerset and Hunterdon counties.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see, look, the biggest issue is going to be the economy. It's inflation, and it's all the related things, including supply chain issues that affect all of us. I mean, when it costs you $5 a gallon, and people have to get to work, some folks who are making minimum wage can't get to work on that kind of money. So you have everybody affected. The baby formula shortage is a tremendous burden on anybody who's an incumbent, because you are being held responsible for these large things that are happening, which, an average congressman probably doesn't have any influence at all on how the supply chain for baby formula is moving along. But that person can be held responsible simply because this is happening on their watch. I mean, these are the reasons why the president is so unpopular.
So, as was once said, it's the economy. It's the economy. Even though members of Congress, you're saying, really can't control. Can't control the issues, but they're still going to be held accountable.
That's exactly it. What we're going to see, I think, is an accountability. This is a referendum, as most midterm elections are, on the sitting president. And you have a strong party that is unified behind the president. And so Democrats are going to be held accountable if people want to hold somebody accountable, even if it's not their fault or they couldn't really do anything. That is the dynamic that is happening across the country, and it's certainly going to affect us here in New Jersey. Now, the way any incumbent offsets that is by talking about how they have delivered for the district, money they've brought back to the district. You still want to reelect me, says the incumbent, because I've helped on mass transit or on improving roads or improving our schools or any of these number of things. You make it local. So I think we're going to see a clash of these kinds of issues. Both the national mood is going to be one factor in how voters decide in this election, and then you're going to have the work of the incumbent and how the incumbent is going to be either valued or dismissed based on whether people really believe they're getting a good deal by having him or her, in some cases, in office.
All right, so a lot of attention here in New Jersey, and I think it's interesting nationwide will be put on District 7. I also want to talk a little bit, shifting gears, about Governor Murphy. He's in his second term, and some of his second term priorities, from gun control, safety, to the environment. Also, we're seeing him get active in some of the New Jersey film credits and bringing productions here to New Jersey. And then you know people talking about, oh, is he going to run for perhaps throw his name in the hat, for his hat in the ring for president. So what do you make of what you see as second term governor? You cannot run for a third in New Jersey. Of his priorities, what is that kind of telling you about him?
In the campaign, the governor didn't really talk about very many specifics of what he wanted to do in his second term. It was all about, keep going forward. But no one necessarily articulated what going forward meant. What we're seeing is that the governor really wants to continue to double down on the things that he has considered major priorities. Now, this has all been reshaped in terms of the governor's push for the second term by the budget. The fact is, New Jersey has to have a balanced budget, and the revenues that have come in for New Jersey in 2022 have been huge. And we all are struggling, but when you have these higher gas prices, that means sales tax is higher. Income taxes are still high. So we're talking about an extra $4.5 billion of unexpected revenue showing up in the state coffers. The governor is playing it very close to the vest in terms of what do we do with all this extra money? Republicans have been very clear. They just want to give the entire thing back. Give it back, and it becomes a slogan for them. And you have different Democratic leaders like Craig Coughlin, who are talking about property tax relief beyond the significant program that the governor had already proposed in his budget address. The state budget has to be done by June 30th. And so right now we are entering that real crunch time where people have to figure out, well, what are we going to do now that we have extra money? Because there's any number of folks, colleges and universities, local K through 12 educators, parks, in the environment, any number of different interests who are saying there's something that we need to do with this extra money. Some of it is small and some of it is big, but that is really, we're going to reshape the governor's second term, because depending on what they spend on, depending on the fruits of that spending, you could have a very different outcome for the next 4 years. And obviously, one of the concerns is these good times won't always last particularly long. And so people want to make sure there's enough in reserve if the economy tanks, as at least nationally, people are predicting in the coming year.
Well,
so
that was kind of my next question is recession. How do you strike that balance between saving for the rainy day, which seems inevitable, more like a tsunami, headed our way, and to give back? I mean, it's flush with our taxpayer dollars, and how do you strike that balance between giving back what taxpayer money and saving for that rainy day? Because things won't stay this way. If
Trenton is true to form, then these things will get split, and they'll do a little bit of rainy day fund investment, and they'll also try and give back even more than they were expecting to give back in terms of tax relief. But you could go, it's a tremendous amount of money. A lot of people could be made very happy because there's so much money to go around. Where people get frustrated in politics in general is when they're left off the list and they're not funded and they don't get the resources that foster care homes need, or that education needs, and environment needs, and global warming, anti-global warming efforts need. All of these kinds of things, many of which people might consider strong priorities and where the state should be going. When you have this much money, you can give some to everybody.
Right.
So
well, exactly.
Really the debate we're having in this state right now over the next few weeks.
Right. And those who want to get reelected, want to be able to say, hey, look, the state had this much money, and look what I was able to bring back, whether it is to education, environment, to what have you. Now, do you think that the governor, people have talked about him possibly running for president? Mm-hmm. How do his ambitions perhaps even play into what we're going to be seeing? As you mentioned, the lawmakers have until June 30th to get that budget approved. It's part of our Constitution. New Jersey must have a balanced budget. So, what do you think, or if at all, if his political ambitions could or could not tie into the budget?
Well, again, I think the governor has absolutely no intention of challenging the incumbent president. He's not going to go up against Joe Biden, with whom he has a strong relationship. So everyone's waiting to find out whether Joe Biden is going to run for re-election. All indications, at least from the Biden camp, are that he will. So it's sort of a moot point. But clearly the governor is out there. He's involved with the Democratic Governors Association, the National Governors Association. He has a bit of a national profile, and he is doing things here and speaking out on student loan forgiveness, on baby formula and how to handle the shortages here, on police licensing. All of these issues, should he decide to move forward with a national run, certainly would help him in order to be able to say, hey, look at my record in New Jersey. I mean, the governor's strength as a potential national figure are going to come if his numbers improve. If his, when I say by his numbers, his popularity, his approval rating. Helping this extra $4.5 billion can make you very popular. And so we'll have to see. He has an opportunity here. We'll see how he plays it.
All right. Well, Ben Dworkin, we thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, to look at what's going on and even projecting a little bit into the future, because that's what we do in New Jersey. We're always on to the next election. What if? What happens next? So we thank you for coming on to talk to us.
Thank you so much, Laura. One of the great things about New Jersey and elections is that we have one every year.
There's never a dull moment. The election state, for certain. Ben Dworkin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that'll do it for today. Thank you so much for watching New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.